For more than a century, Charles Gilchrist Adams has served as pastor of the Hartford Memorial Baptist Church in Detroit, Michigan. During that time, he has been busy with a number of activities. Dr. Adams was invited to speak before the United Nations on the subject of South Africa. He was a speaker for the World Congress of the Baptist World Alliance in Seoul, Korea. He was elected to the World Council of Churches Central Committee. He was elected president of the Progressive National Baptist Convention. He's been awarded 10 honorary doctoral degrees from a range of institutions of higher education, including Morehouse College. He is an editorial columnist for the Michigan Chronicle and an occasional contributing writer for the Detroit Free Press. And in 1994, Dr. Adams was invited by President Clinton to accompany him to Jordan to witness the signing of the peace accord between that nation and Israel. Although this list of achievements is partial and hardly does justice to Dr. Adams' remarkable career, it does offer some insight into why Ebony magazine cited him as one of the 15 greatest black preachers and one of the 100 most influential black Americans. But impressive as such achievements are, they do not afford as much insight into the dedication and commitment of Dr. Charles Gilchrist Adams as does a statement describing recipients of the Rabbi Marvin Katzenstein Award. That award, which the Harvard Divinity School presented to Dr. Adams in 1992, recognizes graduates of the school who exhibit, and I quote, a passionate and helpful interest in the lives of other people, an informed and realistic faithfulness and embodiment of the idea that love is not so much a way of feeling as a way of acting, and a reliable sense of humor, unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to present to you a man who meets those stringent criteria, a man who's a member of the Board of Trustees of Morehouse College, one of the greatest preachers of our time, our 1995 baccalaureate speaker, the Reverend Dr. Charles Gilchrist Adams. Dr. Adams.
Giving glory to our God in all due befitting humility, and in thanksgiving to Dr. Wiley Perdue for the marvelous work he is doing as acting president of this great institution, and for bringing us to the occasion of the dedication of the Mays and the Thurman Memorials, which we will participate in this weekend. And also, I must say to him that whenever I've given anybody a quarter for change and they gave me back $1, I was greatly, highly honored, and he's so magnanimous in spirit that rather than give me credit for just the 26 years that I've been at Hartford, he gave me credit for the whole century, and I'm grateful. But I think that indicates some of the media hype that goes into most introductions. They're safe as long as you don't inhale them. I want to express my abiding gratitude to Dr. Thomas Kilgore, the chairman emeritus of our Morehouse Board of Trustees, who is here, and to Dr. T.M. Alexander, the most recent emeritus member of our Board of Trustees, and to Dr. Otis Moss, our eloquent and saintly chairman of the Morehouse Board of Trustees, who certainly helped to bring us to this glorious day in the history of this school and in the history of our race. To Dr. Hugh Morris Gloucester, who built the new and expanded Morehouse College campus. And to Dr. Coretta Scott King, who is the First Lady of Black America. And Dr. Samuel Du Bois Cook, President of Dillard University, a leader in the Morehouse tradition of unequaled intelligence and impeccable integrity. And Dr. Lawrence E. Carter, who in this chapel, built by Dr. Gloucester, has transformed the strong relationship between worship and work. It is a high honor for me to share in your graduation. As I think about what I'm going to say when I take a little piece of the William Belden Noble Lectures at my theological alma mater, I'm going to talk about preaching that changed the world. There are 4 Morehouse men whose preaching changed the world. The first that I'm going to talk about in October of this year will be C.T. Walker of Augusta, who more than anyone else related faith to personal transformation. And then there is Benjamin Elijah Mays, who more than anyone else related faith to education. And then there is Howard W. Thurman, who more than anyone else related faith to the formation of human community. And then there's Martin Luther King Jr., who more than anyone who ever lived since Christ related faith to the supremacy of love and the necessity of a nonviolent social revelation and revolution. Congratulations to you who are the best graduating class in 1995 that Morehouse has ever seen. Congratulations also to your parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and wives and husbands and significant others who supported your educational efforts. And you, of course, know that you have greatly achieved by reading some books and writing some papers and passing some exams and completing some laborious experiments, indicating that you are indeed ready to enter the world of work and/or advanced study as educated men. You are highly qualified by your academic and religious experience to face the most difficult challenges, solve the most complex problems, and do the most arduous and demanding work. Would you turn for a moment to Genesis? And I hope that you will not only carry your diploma, but also your Bible. Genesis, the 9th chapter, the 20th and the 21st verse, where we read, "And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent." The subject is drunk on the eve of Reconstruction. The purpose of this talk is, if possible, to help you and me not to be a disappointment to God, but pleasing in God's sight and a blessing to humanity. Now, that's not so easy to do. because we are born in this world with a natural inclination to goof our best opportunities, fumble our best chances, and ruin our highest possibilities. This is the sad and repeated tragedy of the sin with which we all are afflicted. We could become wiser, holier, happier persons. We could be a stronger, more productive, powerful, freer race of people. We could become better believers and greater churches if we were more serious, more sober, and more alert. We could redevelop and empower our own community, but the tragedy is our helpless, listless condition in the face of glorious opportunities which we are missing because we can't see them, and can't see them because we are drunk. Perhaps not drunk with wine, but drunk with the wrong attitude, or drunk with an ingrown preoccupation with self, or drunk with insularity, narrowness of vision, arrogance, and conceitedness, or drunk with rootlessness, foolishness, thanklessness, thoughtlessness, or drunk with worldliness, secularity, and bigotry, forgetfulness, and materialism, or drunk with guilt, grief, and regret. Wine and weed are not the only causes of drunkenness. We may indeed find ourselves physically sober today, yet morally wobbly and woozy, spiritually weakened, historically deracinated, mind slow and dull, hands quivering and shaking, vision blocked and blurred, steps uncertain and somewhat staggering, on the eve of God's reconstruction of the world. The only family left on earth after the flood was the family of which Noah was the head. We see in verse 18 that the sons of Noah have with their father stemmed the deadly flood. There were left only 4 fathers in the world after the flood: Noah and his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. These 3 sons were to people the whole earth, repopulate the world, and become families and nations. Ignorant and bigoted writers and pseudo-scholars have tried to make out of these 3 sons of Noah 3 distinct races of humanity. According to their stupid reckoning, Shem is the Semitic family, notable among whom are the Jews. Ham is the African, notable among whom are the Egyptians, and Japheth is the white man, notable among whom are the Germans, the French, the British, the Italians, the Polish, the Dutch, the white South Africans, the white Americans. When in preparation for this message, I checked all of the biblical commentaries written by confused white men to explain the meaning of these 3 sons of Noah. I became frustrated, angry, and disgusted. My soul, how they lied on God and exploited innocent biblical truth to justify the racism that has raped Africa of her people and her wealth, and the injustices and inequities that have stained the earth with shame and drenched the nations in blood. The 3 sons of Noah are not 3 races, but 3 blood brothers. They have the same mama, the same papa, the same Noachic traits, the same genealogical sources, the same physiological features, the same physiological possibilities, the same sociological status, the same anthropological characteristics, and the same epistemological dimensions. They're not 3 races, they're 3 blood brothers. It was the drunkenness of Noah that caused him to curse one of his sons, Ham, or to be more exact, he cursed Canaan, the son of Ham, and that made it easy for bigots to use the Bible to salve their consciences and to justify their wickedness. Suffice it now to say that God didn't curse Ham. It was Noah who cursed Canaan, and he didn't do that till he got drunk. Noah had stepped up a notch on the social and economic scale. He climbed up heavier and higher on the ladder of human achievement and ambition. He went into the ark as a herdsman and came forth from the ark as a husbandman. He went into the ark as an animal raiser and came forth from the ark as a farmer. He had gained stability and standing as a settler and had no longer to be a wandering nomad or shepherd looking for grassy and watery places to feed and nourish his cattle. He started to build and settle and grow and spread. God blessed Noah, saved him alive, gave him station and establishment in life. It is a blessing one day for you to be able to settle somewhere and no longer have to be an industrial nomad or a corporate wanderer shifting from place to place. I was blessed to settle in Boston for nearly 7 years. Both of my children were born there, and this Easter Sunday marks the 26th anniversary of my settling in Detroit with the people of Hartford Church. And from there, I've told them, no matter how ugly I get or black I become, from there I will settle only in heaven. But Noah was allowed to settle down and cultivate the soil. He became a farmer, a tiller of the soil. And Noah took full advantage of that opportunity. He not only planted corn and wheat and tomatoes and turnip and collard greens to strengthen the body, but he also planted a vineyard. And he grew grapes, and he discovered the fine art of making wine. Now, I know that those of you who attend a Baptist school do not know it firsthand, but somebody has told you what wine will do to you. How it turns you on and lightens the head, gladdens the heart, and loosens the tongue. An ecumenical group of leaders from all over the world met at the home of the late President Tubman of Liberia for a reception that was being staged for the then Vice President of the country, the Reverend William Talbot, who had just been elected President of the Baptist World Alliance. There was present on the table a large bowl of chilled punch filled with unidentified and undifferentiated ingredients. And when one of our leaders, well known to all, not Dr. Carter, went stepping to the table for the 7th consecutive time with his cup in his hand, somebody said, "Preacher, do you know what you're drinking?" He said, "No, and I don't want anybody to tell me." Nobody told Noah what he was drinking. Nobody commanded him not to drink it. Thus, he was free to experiment, and he discovered one of the sheer delights of his post-catastrophic experience. Can you imagine how Noah felt when he took his first drink of wine? He started off with a half cup and felt a delightful buzz in his head. Then he took a full cup and began to laugh and dance. He took a jar full and felt no pain. He took 2 jars and waxed loquacious, if not quite coherent. He took a whole jug full and flew high as a kite, tuned cleaned out of the world, flipped plumb out, forgot who he was, where he was, why he was, or what he was to do, lost all sense of dignity, duty, and mission, drowned away his wisdom and integrity, drank down his pride, pulled off his clothes, and fell down naked in the tent. Noah was drunk. He was in the wrong condition at the wrong time. He was living on the day of blessing. He had been spared to become the father of a new humanity. He had been brought through the flood to stand on the brink of a new and better day. He should have been thinking and thanking and planting and planning and building and stabilizing and strategizing and prioritizing. It was not the time for drunkenness. It was the day for reconstruction. What a disappointment Noah was to God. Here God had cleansed the earth, bleached it with watery judgment, And God had cleansed the earth of all race prejudice and all war and all hate and all apartheid, washed clean the human slate, and got the best person he could find to use that person to build a brave new world. He was calling on Noah to do it, depending on Noah to do it. But Noah couldn't do it because he was in a drunken stupor, naked in his tent. This is exactly where we are today. This is the age of Reconstruction. The old world is passing away and a new world is about to be born. The economic and political preponderance is shifting from the north to the south, from the suburbs to the city, from Europe to America, and from America to Asia and Africa. Europe and North America do not have the raw materials, do not possess the mineral wealth or the affordable labor to sustain our capitalized civilization. Americans and Europeans are dependent upon Africans and Asians to keep the wheels of Western economies turning. Without oil from the Middle East and without more oil from Nigeria, and capital from Japan, and gold and copper, zinc, chromium, and diamonds from Southern Africa, and cheap labor from South America and other places in the third world, the bottom will fall out of the structure of Western capitalism. We are caught in the throes of short natural supplies, a crisis in energy, and a no-growth economy. Europe and America are going down. Africa and Asia are rising up. It's a new day of opportunity for third world people. There are opportunities now available for African Americans that have never been open to us before. Though African Americans are now suffering from underemployment and unemployment, the gross income for African Americans in 1994 was $360 billion, and in 1995, according to a University of Georgia study, the buying power of African Americans shall reach $399 billion in 1995. It does not yet appear what it shall be. This is a day of opportunity. This is an age of Reconstruction. There is an abundance of wealth waiting for skilled hands to earn it and prepared minds to control it. But I wonder, are we drunk? Are we crazy and helpless and listless on the day of Reconstruction? Do you realize how much more can be accomplished today with $400 billion than was possible 50 or 100 years ago? When I look at how much our grandparents and great-grandparents did with just a little bit of money, and what small things we are doing with a whole lot of money, I've come to the conclusion that we must be drunk on the eve of Reconstruction. When we were emancipated in 1863 and in 1865, we had absolutely nothing, zilch. They promised us 40 acres and a mule, and we ain't seen neither one of them. We had no money, no federal commitment to public education, no equal protection under the law, no credit with the banks. But we had God and churches and each other, and using resources that were more moral than monetary, we established our own schools, built our own churches, financed our own businesses, educated our own children, bought or constructed our own houses, and served and transformed our own communities. In 1923, the late Bishop R.A. Carter of the CME Church, speaking at Payne College in Augusta, Georgia, noted that blacks had, in the short space of 60 years since emancipation, accumulated 22 million acres of land, 78 banks and 100 insurance companies, and 20,000 other business enterprises with capital worth of $150 million. 72 years later, most of our banks have gone bankrupt, and we own less than 2,000 acres of land. We are drinking plenty of scotch, but we don't own much property. It has been demonstrated mathematically that if African Americans stopped drinking scotch, the scotch companies would have to quit making it and go plumb out of business. They're doing a hard sell in the black community of scotch and wine cooler and weed and crack cocaine and lewd sexy music and decadent videos and waste and trash. But who is promoting upon us, among us, the ownership of property, the productive and profitable participation in the economy? And I wonder, are whites also drunk with the illusion that the development of their communities can coexist with the underdevelopment of other communities and the devastation of the natural order? Can it be good for any America? Can it be good for America that any American be left undeveloped? Is it in the national interest that too many people in this country are homeless and hapless and helpless, despite the fact that we have been out of slavery for 132 years and that we have almost 1 million independent entrepreneurs and professionals and corporate executives who make better than $50,000 a year, and despite the fact that Bill Cosby is as rich as cream cheese and Oprah Winfrey is the hottest thing on TV, making more than $150 million a year, and despite the fact that Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, Tina Turner, Aretha Franklin, Luther Vandross, and Patti LaBelle, and Whitney Houston dominate and control the field of popular music, and despite the fact that Michael Jordan owns professional basketball, the overall condition of black Americans has never been worse. 35% of black Americans are living below the poverty line, 20% are unemployed and unemployable, 50% black teenagers are unemployed, 45% are functionally illiterate, 50% are high school dropouts, over 50% of our African American babies are being born to very poor, unwed mothers who are mired deep at the bottom of the economic pyramid. 10% of blacks are hooked on something other than the Holy Ghost, and we seem powerless to improve these heinous conditions. What are we doing with our $400 billion? Well, I'll tell you what we're doing. We're the last of the big-time spenders. We drink 50% of the Coke that is made, but that company does not think enough of us to give us 50% of its charitable donations. They gave the Atlanta University Center $15 million for a library for 5 schools, and they gave Emory on the same day $150 million for a library for 1 school, and yet we continue to choke on Coke. Our people drink 50% of the Scotch whiskey that is sold in this country and get nothing out of it but a dizzy head, an empty pocketbook, and an underdeveloped community. We buy 25% of all GM, Ford, and Chrysler luxury products, but we do not get nearly 25% of their board seats, managerial positions, procurement contracts, or charitable contributions. We buy more than our fair share of Japanese and German automotive and electronic products, but we get only insulted, ignored, and demeaned in return. A racist economy tolerates vast inequalities and capitalistic opportunity to its own peril. The inability of African Americans of means to borrow money for capital development rather than for consumer spending is the iron lid over the coffin of an economic downturn that goes far beyond African Americans. When savers of color are not allowed to borrow in proportion to their own savings in order to develop their own communities, everybody suffers the sting of underdevelopment. Since African Americans are in the intensive care ward of the United States economy, there is a tremendous opportunity for Morehouse men to lead the way to economic reconstruction and moral revolution. You can conceive, implement, and complete an economic development plan for African American communities. We are handling $400 billion a year. That's more than the gross national product of Canada and 15 other nations. And a united collegiate entrepreneurial church community could seek to garner 5% of that money, not as a gift from individuals, but an investment made by individuals, and put that money into an African American church college community development fund. And with $400 billion and 5% coming from that put into such a fund, we would have $20 billion a year, $120 billion in 6 years. And if you would manage that money under the leadership of Morehouse men of competence and character and faith in God, we could build our own factories, finance our own institutions, employ our own indigents, solve our own problems, take care of our own people, educate our own children, multiply and strengthen our own banks, liberate and dignify our own race, and save and deliver our people from drugs and crime and guns and violence and teenage pregnancy and high school attrition. The challenge is yours, for you are educated men. You know your history. You know the connection between church and community formation, between faith and education. You know what can happen when we serve God and serve humanity. You know that the African American church has given African Americans Morehouse College and everything else that we have. An African American lawyer told me, I don't go to church because I think that it has kept my people down and held them back. I said, how ignorant can an intelligent man be? You need to read something other than the funny paper. You need to read Carter G. Woodson's History of the Negro Church, E. Franklin Frazier's Negro Church in America, Gaylord Wilmore's Black Religion and Black Radicalism, Vincent Harding's There Is a River, Eric Lincoln's African American Churches, Albert Roberteau's Slave Religion, Cornel West's Prophesied Religion, Alden Morris's The Origin of the Civil Rights Movement. They all tell us that everything we possess as a people was mothered in the uterus of African American churches. Dr. Hugh Morris Gloucester has taught me and many others that for their part, African American Baptists working in tandem with the American Baptist Home Mission Society and Black Baptist State Conventions determined to establish a black college or university in every southern state. In Alabama, it was Selma University. In Florida, it was Florida Memorial College. In North Carolina, it was Shaw University. In South Carolina, it was Benedict and Morris. In Virginia, it was Virginia Union. In West Virginia, it was Storer College. In Arkansas, it was Arkansas Baptist College. In Mississippi, it was what has become Jackson State College. In Kentucky, it was Simmons University. In Tennessee, it was Roger Williams College, now Lemoyne Owen College. In Texas, it was Bishop. In Louisiana, it was Leland. And in Georgia, it was Morehouse and Spelman. We do a lot of talk about Newt Gingrich, and I want you to know that I'm not one of his fans. But it is not really Newt Gingrich who is doing us in. It is ungrateful and ungiving alumni who are tearing down our heritage. Someone said that the first generation are the originators of the institution, the second generation are the operators, and the third generation are the liquidators. But the African American church is all that we own, control, and lead. It sits in the middle of the dark and dangerous and difficult ghetto. Everybody in the ghetto does not belong to the church, but the church belongs to everybody in the ghetto. It is the producer of our genius. It is the guarantor of our sanity. It is the power base for our political ascendancy. It is the parent of our music and art. It is the sponsor of our creativity. It is the incubator for our leadership. It is the storehouse for the disinherited. It is the power base for the disfranchised. It is a hospital for wounded souls. It is a love tabernacle for the hated and exploited. It is an open door to the least and the last, the lost, the little, the lowest, the unlucky, and the left out. It is the biggest enemy to the status quo. It is a central agency for anti-segregation and anti-defamation. It is a rock in a weary land of oppression. It is a shelter from the stormy blast of bigotry. It faces a frowning world and says, we shall overcome. And we ought to use it to unite and sustain our community. Don't you dare be content to get a BA from Morehouse and an MBA from somewhere only to work for the rest of your life as a slave on somebody else's corporate plantation. Work for somebody else only long enough to gain knowledge and skill and experience and capital to move out on your own and form your own corporation with franchises all over the world. You ought to know how to serve your people. If the white man can beat me preaching to my people, he can have my job. If the Germans control the beer industry, and if French control the champagne industry, and if the British control the wool industry, and if Italians control the pizza industry, and if Jews control the diamond industry, and if Japanese control the electronics industry, and if white Americans control the hamburger and cola industries, then we ought to control the barbecue, fried chicken, turnip greens, and chitterling industries. This is no time to be drunk. This is a critical hour for all humankind. We have hard work to do and dilapidated neighborhoods to reconstruct, broken down schools to rebuild, and renewed opportunities to seize oppressed people to educate. We have beautiful children to teach and to spiritualize. God is in the process of building a new world, and God is calling for prepared people, serious people, sober minds, steady hands, loving hearts, Morehouse men to face the challenge of this hour. Noah got drunk on the day of Reconstruction, drunk with the wine of the world. He forgot God. Drunk with a sense of his own success and self-sufficiency, he lay naked in his tent. Like us, he had been successful. He had built the ark. He stared it through the flood. He landed on top of Mount Ararat. He was way up in the thrill of survival and the throbbing joy of success. He was way up in the ecstasy of his encounter with God. He alone had received a commitment of God that God would never again destroy the earth by water. He alone had been blessed to see the sign of the rainbow hanging on the gray, shaggy shoulders of the clouds. He looked all around him and saw every evidence of God's goodness and mercy. The grass was green, the fields were flushed with amber waves of golden grain, the cattle were fertile, the stalls were packed with livestock, the vines were fat with grapes dripping with luscious vitality. There was no shortage of anything that Noah wanted, and he could not stand it. It went to his head. Noah got drunk. Can you stand your own success? You don't have to get drunk off chemicals. You can get drunk off of your achievements, advantages, and advancements. You can forget to remember where your blessings came from. You can forget to remember that somebody prayed for you and went to the wall for you and sacrificed for you and went in debt for you to come through school. African Americans were once a sober and serious people. When we were living in Africa, we were a spiritual people, tied to the land, but also attuned to the whispering winds of eternity. We organized the oldest extant Christian church in the world, and our native African religions are characterized by their warmth and sincerity and relevance and total reverence for life. These indigenous religions of Africa prepared us not only to receive Christianity, but also to transform it. And when we came to America as slaves, we accepted the white man's edition of Christianity, but we filtered it through our own African experience and thereby restored it to the New Testament key signature of universal love. We took a cold religion and restored it to African spirituality and Pentecostal fervor. We took stiff, stilted hymns and turned them into spiritual melodies and harmonies for the heart. We took a dry, rotted religion of the head and made it a lively religion for the soul. We took what had been distorted into a cruel justification for slavery and straightened it out until it became a theology of liberation and a program for reparation. We took the narrow parochialism of their nationalistic insanity and stretched it out until it became an inclusive concept of the kingdom of God. We took their hate and turned it into love. We took oppression and turned it into opportunity. We took ice and turned it into fire. We took the Bible and saw in it wonderful things that we had never seen or heard before. For the only thing that we had heard in church is what the masters read to us. And they would turn to those passages that say, slaves, obey your masters. But when we learned how to read, we discovered also what to read. And the next time they told us to obey our masters as a biblical mandate, we read to them from the same Bible, different themes and higher ideals. We said, turn over here to Exodus and read that God told Moses to tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. We said, turn over to Isaiah, where Isaiah said in chapter 58, undo heavy burdens, set the captives free, and break every yoke. We turned over in Luke chapter 4:18, where Jesus said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, the recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those that are oppressed, and to do it right now. We turned over in Acts, the 26th verse of the 17th chapter, where Paul stood on Mars Hill and said, God said, I have made of one blood all nations to dwell upon the face of the earth. Slave masters took the Bible and used it to beat us over the head, but we took it off of our heads and put it in our hearts and used it to set our people free. But now, we have become so successful that we have turned secular and skeptical, sophisticated, alienated, apocapated, individualistic, solipsistic, materialistic, Reaganistic, Bushistic, Gingristic, bluppies, the black, upwardly mobile, technocratic, blasé bourgeoisie. Don't have time for church and ain't got time to pray. When you do go to church, you go in there like you're doing the preacher, God, and everybody else a great big favor. Too cute to clap, too cold to cry, too dry to dance, too arrogant to say amen, and too puffed up to praise God. Can you stand success? I know you can stand failure and still keep trying, but can you stand success and still stay sober? I know you can stand to put on sackcloth and still be proud, but can you stand to put on broadcloth and not lose the common touch? I know you can stand to be poor and still be diligent, but can you stand to be rich and still be kind? I know you can stand to be uneducated and still be streetwise, but can you stand to have a degree from Morehouse and still be humble and useful? I know you can live in a shack and still be clean, but can you live in a mansion and still be friendly and hospitable? I know you can be unpopular and still hold on to your convictions, but can you stand to be popular and still keep your integrity? I know you can be down and still look up, but can you get up and still reach down to help somebody else come up? I know you can live in Southwest Atlanta and still be safe, but can you live in Buckhead and not forget where you came from and how you got there? Noah got drunk and eventually died and left this world in a moral mess because of the good he did not do. He disappointed God. He disappointed the occasion. He let God down. He let you and me down. He reintroduced into human history the same violence and bigotry that had previously destroyed it. And God had to go on a profound search, trying to find somebody else to build this brave new world. Along came Abraham, but Abraham couldn't do it because he lied to save his own neck. Along came Moses, but Moses couldn't do it because he had the blood of an Egyptian on his hands. Along came Samson. Samson couldn't do it because he depleted his strength shacking up with Delilah. Along came Samuel. Samuel couldn't do it because he was too stern and mean. Along came King Saul. Saul couldn't do it because he was too jealous and insecure. Along came David. David couldn't do it because he blew his cool having sex with Bathsheba. Along came Solomon. Solomon couldn't do it because he had too many women in his life. 700 wives and 300 concubines. What more could he do? Along came Jeremiah. Jeremiah couldn't do it because he cried all the time. Along came Ezekiel. Ezekiel couldn't do it because he was too apocalyptic and mystical. Along came Isaiah. Isaiah couldn't do it because he was more critical than constructive. Along came Job. Job couldn't do it because he called God into question. Every person that God ever depended on to build a brave new world disappointed the occasion, let God down, but God would not give up. God would not be outdone. God said, since I can't send anybody, I'll go myself. Since I can't use anybody, I'll do it myself. And he stepped through 42 generations, was born in Bethlehem, put on mortal flesh, was wrapped in swaddling clothes, laid in a manger, baptized in the Jordan, crucified on Calvary, wounded in his side. God died to make us holy, but he lives to make us free. I don't belong to Noah, I belong to God. Noah cursed me, but Jesus saved me. On Christ, the solid rock I stand. On Christ, Adam's Redeemer, Eden's tree of life, Abel's vindicator, Noah's ark, Abraham's sacrifice, Isaac's hope, Jacob's star, Judah's Shiloh, Joseph's dream, Moses' rock, Joshua's courage, Deborah's authority, Samson's strength, Gideon's captain, Samuel's Ebenezer, Elijah's fire, Amos's justice, Hosea's love, Micah's mercy, Isaiah's Prince of Peace, Jeremiah's balm in Gilead, Ezekiel's wheel in a wheel, Habakkuk's joy, Nehemiah's wall, Daniel's stone, David's music, Solomon's wisdom, Vashti's virtue, Esther's determination, Zechariah's branch, and Malachi's messenger. On Christ, the solid rock I stand. I wish I had 10,000 tongues just to say thank you. If I were Chinese, I'd say Odia. If I were Danish, I'd say Mingatot. If I were Italian, I'd say Grazia. If I were Hebrew, I'd say Dota Rabba. If I were Greek, I'd say Eucharisto. If I were Japanese, I'd say domo arigato. If I were Portuguese, I'd say obrigado. If I were Spanish, I'd say muchas gracias. If I were French, I'd say merci beaucoup. If I were Russian, I'd say spasiba. If I were German, I'd say danke schön. If I were Nigerian, I'd say eshe pupo. If I were Kenyan, I'd say ashanta. If I were Ghanaian, I'd say medasi mapi. If I were Zulu, I'd say ingia bunga. If I were Sutu, I'd say keyale boha. If I were deaf, I'd say I am who I am, and I feel what I feel. I'll just say thank you, thank you, thank you. Glory to God, we shall overcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Be seated. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Very good. Very good. Thank you.